Oregon's got 2 new coordinators and a basketball team that, well, they're just not very good.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day whenever you listen to the show. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all so much for making that the case. Oregon has hired Chris Hampton and Drew Mehringer, according to reports, and Oregon basketball lost their 5th straight. Kelly Graves has got the women's team absolutely rolling. They play number 4 UCLA on Sunday. That would be a welcome sight to see. Dana Altman squad, way away from that. All in today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. So, according to reports, the moves were official. A double internal promotion. Pretty unique that this has been the case. And I said when the search began, of course it didn't last very long, that Chris Hampton would have been my number one desired target for the defensive coordinator. And offensively, I thought they could go for a big swing. Whether or not they landed Chris Henry Jr., the lineup of weapons that any offensive coordinator, which obviously be Mehringer, has to work with for Oregon in 2026, and the possibility of Dante Moore coming back as well, which I think happens barring a national championship run, as in Oregon winning the national championship, at which point, how hard would we care about 2026? Seriously. So I think that Oregon had the ability, and I was a little surprised. I was a little disappointed that they didn't appear to seriously entertain any of these other options. And then I thought about it a little bit more. And I thought, well, hold on. How quickly did the Will Stein thing come together? Very fast. That's how it felt to people like you and me, right? That are not on the Oregon coaching staff. It felt like, man, he's the top target. Boom, he's the head coach. Whoa, that was really quick. Now, the Cal thing with Tosh Lupoi took a little bit longer. By the way, it looks like he's keeping JKS at Berkeley for next year, which is a huge recruiting win for Tosh Lupoi. No surprise. No surprise that he's doing that right now. If those came together that quickly, first contact was probably made a while back. And there's a pretty good chance, dare I say a darn near certainty, that both of those guys, who are obviously very close with Dan Lanning, told him that they were going to do that. And Dan Lanning has publicly supported many a times his assistant coaches going on to be head coaches. Every single coordinator that has worked under Dan Lanning has now become a Power 4 head coach. That's a pretty awesome thing to be able to say. And another reason why I thought, man, feels like you do a national search for at least one of those coordinator jobs. Because if you're just churning out head coaches, which is what Dan Lanning's doing, the coordinator positions are just a head coaching factory at this point, then you could attract anybody. Because that's what a lot of guys are looking for that would be seeking to make a jump to be Oregon's offensive or defensive coordinator. But if this has been in the works for a while, and certainly it feels like at least the Stein one has, and there's a good relationship between Dan Lanning and his coordinators, which by all accounts there were, maybe he did. Maybe he did. I had 2 thoughts as I thought about it further. Maybe he did go and look to see what other options were out there, who would interest him. He went back to the proverbial, or I think there's a literal Rolodex of coordinator names and coaches that he's worked with or liked or come across over the years. Maybe he did think through that while also measuring the qualifications of Drew Mehringer to be the offensive coordinator and determine, yeah, Mehringer's the best guy, or Hampton's the best guy at defensive coordinator. I don't think there's anybody else that we could get that would be better than Chris Hampton. That could absolutely be the conclusion that Dan Lanning wound up getting to through the process. The other consideration that I gave, or the other thought I had after further consideration, is what about Dan Lanning's past and present as a head coach, of which he is not a play caller on either side of the ball, leads us to believe that he doesn't know what he's doing. So it is strange and unusual. Look at what happened at Ohio State. So last year, Ohio State goes and wins the national championship, right? I'm actually recording this game at halftime of the Big Ten championship game. I suspect Ohio State's going to win because they're the best team in college football, and frankly, I don't know who's going to beat them. But last year, Chip Kelly goes to the NFL. He's done with college football. Jim Knowles goes to Penn State. He was done with Ohio State. And what did Ryan Day do? Promoted one, hired outside for another. I thought Dan Lanning might do that here. But there were questions for the Buckeyes coming into this season, man. And this was one that I had about them. And I think it's a fair question to ask. When you have double coordinator turnover, boy, what are you going to be? How good were those guys? Really good. Jim Knowles became the highest paid DC in the country at Penn State. Chip Kelly was deemed as good enough to go to the NFL. It did not work out with Pete Carroll. They were trying to relive the glory days of the Back Ten, and it just didn't quite click. So for Ohio State, they went 1-1 in Oregon to do the double promotion. I thought, you know what? Maybe Dan Lanning does know. Because the research that I can do and what I know, having never met or spoken directly with Drew Mehringer, I don't think he'd be at the top of my list. But does Dan Lanning know more? Has Dan Lanning earned the benefit of the doubt when it comes to making any sort of hiring decision on his staff? The answer is unequivocally yes. Because guys have left before. You got to be able to hire. You got to be able to develop new coaches, just like you develop new players when guys leave. And I think Dan Lanning has done a really, really good job of that. So, maybe it's a 1-year solution for Chris Hampton, a defensive coordinator, and then Dan Lanning would make an outside hire. Maybe Mehringer doesn't work out. Maybe he works out really well. He's called plays before, not a ton. He did it in a co-OC position, and it's tough to know, and of course Lanning will never give a straight answer. When you see co-offensive coordinator, that generally means there are two guys. I don't think there's ever a staff that has three co-OCs. Typically, one is more of the primary play caller than the other. Now, there was a situation that, by the way, resulted in the staff getting fired at the end of, or before the year ended, shocker, down at Auburn, where at one point in time, it looked like Hugh Freeze was going to call the third down plays, someone else was doing second down plays, and someone else was doing first down plays. I never got full clarity on that, but there was this big mismatch. When you have co-offensive coordinators, there might be active discussions between the two about what to call in a given play. But one guy is calling the plays generally more than the other one. So when Mehringer's been the co-OC, has he been calling the plays a lot? Has he not been? Here's the other thing, though. Obviously, the coaches are all on the headsets together during the games. And when you think about it from the standpoint of, hey, the 1 year that Mehringer was the full-time offensive coordinator and play caller at Rutgers was in 2016. The offense averaged just 283 yards per game. Now you can say it's Rutgers, that's not very good. I look at Rutgers offense this year and see they're doing a whole heck of a lot better, but I don't know what the state of the Scarlet Knights football program was back in 2016. But the other silver lining that I'd give with this situation, which I think is just being fair, is I hope we all agree by now that Will Stein is a good offensive coordinator, which he is. Mehringer's been right there learning from the guy for the last 3 seasons. That's pretty darn good. Pretty darn good, because it wasn't just 1 year, and I believe Mehringer was on staff in 2022, so he's learned under Dillingham as well. Lanning clearly feels like he's ready for the role. And if he is, okay, we're going to find out. So, preliminary thoughts in the YouTube comments below about all of this. Bud sent in a question about this. How will the outgoing and incoming coordinators divvy up their responsibilities during the playoff run, particularly play calling? The answer to that is nothing will change until those guys are no longer on Oregon staff. I cannot imagine or fathom why you would change what has worked so well to prepare for the future when you have a chance to go win a national championship right here, right now. Both coaches are staying. Both guys are their respective play callers on that side of the ball. So I don't think you're going to have Mehringer getting to try it out, as the OC. Maybe if Oregon's playing a group of 5 team on December 19th or 20th and they're up 30 going into the 4th. Maybe then you but other than that, no. I don't think that you make any sorts of changes or tweaks, you work all that into the offseason and you let those guys learn from two really good coordinators in a postseason environment. So drop your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. How are you feeling about each of the respective hires? Want to hear what you guys have to say. Hit me up on Twitter, YouTube, all that good stuff. So, you know what's not good stuff? Dan Altman's team. Oh, it's looking really bad. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or their momentum flips after a turnover. And FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. They have live spreads and money lines that are adjusting instantly. Player props update as guys heat up, or perhaps the opposite. And whatever Oregon's line is against whoever their opponent is, we'll find out on Sunday. You're going to be able to bet it at FanDuel, of course. If you think the Ducks are rolling, maybe you take Oregon, swallow the points, which could be a pretty big number. If you think it's going to be tight no matter what, maybe you think a group of 5 team, which is about a 99% chance of happening, maybe you think they're going to cover. Whatever you think is going to happen, you can put your knowledge to the test with FanDuel. And if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Saturday's show was going to do just a basketball show, but then realized, you know what? The coordinators are a lot more of a chipper topic to talk about right now. Dana Altman's team is a mess. Just an absolute 74-63. They dropped their 5th straight game to UCLA. And Oregon made a push. They were down 13 at the half. They got it to within 3, and then, as usual, they can't get out of their own way. So, you've heard me say the narrative. You've probably heard some others say it before. Well, Dana Altman starts slow. Dana Altman figures it out. This is different. This is very different. In my time hosting this show, this is easily the worst Dana Altman coach basketball team that I have covered. They do so many things wrong and so few things well. And when individual performances give you some sense of hope, a different individual performance just brings you crashing back down to reality. So today was a great day for Jackson Shellstad. 20 points. Now, 2 assists and 3 turnovers, not the ratio you're looking for from your point guard, but he was 4 of 9 from 3, 7 of 12 from the field. It's very Jackson Shellstad sort of day. Takai Simpkins had a good game, 14 points. He was 3 of 7 from beyond the arc. Those two guys made 7 of Oregon's 8 threes. They went 8 of 27 from beyond the arc. The Ducks are shooting a lot of threes, as many as they have per game in the Dana Altman era ever, and they're not a very good three-point shooting team. So offensively, yeah, that leads to some struggles from time to time. The defensive struggles continue to be there. The bench struggles continue to be there. I'll get to that in a moment. But Nate Biddle just had maybe his worst game as a Duck that I can remember. He had 3 points. He had no field goals. He was 3 of 4 at the line. He was 0 for 10 from the floor with 4 rebounds and a block and a couple of assists. Oregon as a team had 8 assists in this game and 11 turnovers. Awful. And representative of what I have talked about with this team all year. And it stands out game after game after game. They are a terrible passing team. On the interior, on the perimeter, in the backcourt, inbounding the ball, just across the board. They are a terrible passing team. And look, 74 points is a better effort defensively. I don't know if that was so much about Oregon's defensive effort as it was UCLA missed so many shots in this game. The Bruins were 56% in the first half. They finished at 44%. They were 6 of 8 from 3 in the first half. You knew that was going to cool down. They went 2 of 10 in the second half, still finished at 44% as a team. The Bruins shot 21 free throws. Oregon shot 24 at a 71% clip. The Bruins shot 21 at an 86% clip. Just about every single stat that you go to, Oregon was beaten by UCLA. They were out-rebounded. They gave up 15 offensive rebounds. Now, Oregon had 16. And for a team as long and as athletic as Oregon is, that's something that should be a strength of theirs. And they do that very well. The problem is once they get an offensive rebound, every single guy in the court looks like some form of a deer in the headlights. What do we do now? Where do we go with the ball? What do I do? Do I shoot? Do I pass? Do I kick it out? Do I try to force it up? Do I try to draw? There's just no consistent plan. And it's a tough watch. The team, frankly, is a tough watch. And I'm gonna focus on the game for this segment, and we'll go big picture later because this is just another game. And Oregon had last year, I think it was a 6-game losing skid. That came in Big Ten play after they had, gotten off to that great start. Let me see when it was. They got into Big Ten play, and they lost 5 games in a row. 5 games in a row in Big Ten play. That was followed up 2, 4, 6. That was followed up with 8 consecutive wins and surging to their highest NCAA tournament seed since the year they went to the Final Four. They were a 5 seed and, of course, beat Liberty, then lost to Arizona. So if Oregon's about to go on an 8-game winning streak, great. That'd be awesome. Dare I say it would be essential to save their season. Now, they have beatable opponents so they can remember what it feels like to win. They play UC Davis, Portland, Gonzaga, and Omaha. 3 of those should be easy wins. Should be. I don't know that they will. But if they beat Gonzaga and they're on a W4 going into Big Ten play, all right, maybe something is there. Now, Oregon didn't have KJ Evans in this game. His presence was sorely missed because as the Ducks were attempting to stage a comeback in the second half, man, they struggled rebounding. Many a time. Sean Stewart was Oregon's leading rebounder along with Des Lindsey. They each had 6. KJ Evans had been playing his best basketball of his entire career. And he was out with an illness in this game. Again, like Biddle being out last time against USC, it's not why Oregon lost. I do not believe that KJ Evans playing would have made it closer for sure. But the problems that Oregon has are often self-inflicted. So a couple of moments in this game that just represent where this Oregon team is at. And it all stems from big picture problems that I'd best describe as a lack of cohesion. They do not play well together as a team, and they do not make good basketball plays. So UCLA drives to the bucket. Guy loses the ball. It's rolling out of bounds to the baseline. An Oregon player has very clearly not touched it. Simpkins goes to dive for it, loses it off his fingertips, out of bounds. Would have been Oregon ball. Instead, it was UCLA ball, and then they gave up a jumper a couple of seconds later. That's this team in a nutshell, is almost doing something right and having that snowball to 2 or 3 other wrong things. Another moment, they had finally gotten to within 3 points in the game and wound up turning the ball over out near half court because Des Lindsey got trapped and just got in a bad spot and was stuck in the air and just threw it away trying to get it to Shellstad, who wouldn't have had anywhere to go anyway. Those are the sorts of moments. Turnovers in the backcourt happen more with this team than I can ever remember for any basketball team, quite frankly. I'm amazed Oregon's turnovers were only 11. It felt like they had way more in this game. But there are just some serious problems, and I don't know how they get fixed. UCLA had all 5 starters in double figures. Simpkins and Shellstad combined for 34 of Oregon's 63 points. The rest of the starting 5 had 8 points. Devon Pryor did not score. Nate Biddle had 3 points. They were all free throws. And Sean Stewart had 5. So, yeah, this is the worst Oregon basketball team I've covered here on the show. And frankly, I'm not optimistic they're going to turn it around. Dane Altman's only ever won 20 games since getting to Eugene. He's done it every single year. Has made the NCAA tournament far more than not. Best coach in the history of Oregon basketball, without question. I don't know how he's turning this around. I don't know that the roster is well enough put together to be able to undergo that sort of turnaround. But I will discuss that further coming up next. First, this episode brought to you by Aura Frames. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap, it's a way to share memories, which is great because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it, so when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. I saw one of these in the store the other day for the first time. It just happened to coincide with the beginning of their advertising here at the network. And let me tell you, this is not just a screen that you're going to put up and say, it's a little bit of an eyesore. Oh, but the photos look cool. No, the frame itself looks great. And the photos roll through and you get to experience more than just one. I mean, why have a traditional picture frame when you can have something Harry Potter-esque? I don't know why you do that either. Aura Frames is where you want to go. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling carver mat frames. Named number one by Wirecutter by using the promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code COLLEGE. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames, they sell out fast. I can see why. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Check them out at auraframes.com. Amazing stat that I also don't think has happened before, and it won't last forever, but I'm curious to see how far it'll go at this point. Oregon is 0-9 in basketball against the spread. Never seen it before. UCLA was favored by 8.5, wound up winning by 11, despite Oregon had a chance to win the game. And then once they get close, they just look like they run out of gas. They reach a point, and you think back to the first 4 games of the year when they won against inferior competition, around the 12 to 13 minute mark of the second half, they would kind of let up with a big lead and let a team back into it, and then they found a way to win. And that was important. But the problem is that at the end of the game, Dana Altman does not have a deep enough lineup of guards that he can trust. So Jackson Shellstad played 38 more minutes in this game. And the reason for that is that there is just no quality guard play of the playmaking variety. And Shellstad's more of a scorer than a playmaker at this point. There is just nothing else. He has to do it all. And so he can wear down. He's your closer, and he can wear down. And he played great in this game for the most part. Again, 2 assists to 3 turnovers is not an acceptable ratio for your starting point guard, especially not a third-year starter like Jackson Shellstad. But one thing I've talked about with this team plenty this year is the production off the bench. It was better in this game, but it doesn't come from the guard position. Jamari Phillips didn't play. I don't know if he was available or not, or if that was just Dana Altman's decision, but Wei Lin is lost out there. He feels closer to traveling than making a good play every time he touches the ball. They don't have serious trust in Phillips anyway. If he was available in this game, I honestly do not know. And then, Alexander Kobzitsi, look, he can come in and put up a couple threes and he'll usually hit one. Okay, fine. But you can't, rotate Shellstad to the bench and then let Simpkins take over because he's been a turnover machine this year. He can't run the offense. They don't have a point forward that could run the offense. KJ Evans could in theory. He, of course, wasn't healthy enough to play in this game, but Evans isn't a very good dribbler. Biddle's not athletic enough. Sean Stewart doesn't have the skill. The flaws of this Oregon roster are becoming more and more apparent as the year goes on. So this was the most productive game and the most minutes that Ige Demir has had all season long. He had 6 points, 5 rebounds, no blocks, 2 turnovers. He was 3-7 from the floor, 0-2 at the foul line. Dane Altman's ability to find poor free throw shooters continues to be absolutely unmatched over the years. But he played 20 minutes, and Des Lindsey played 21 minutes. And both guys, I think, gave you good minutes off the bench. Lindsey didn't shoot it efficiently, but he was active. He was working hard. He got a couple buckets. He had 8 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 steals. He was 4 or 5 at the foul line. Like, that's fine. He's got to get his three-point shot going, but it's not a huge part of his game. So those two guys, and Kobzitsi, again, did well. But none of those guys are a playmaker. And so Lindsey not being able to shoot, and Demir is a big, physical, hulking presence inside, but he has got very little skill. And Sean Stewart is a different kind of presence. He's an unbelievable athlete, and he has got no offensive game. He is not a great passer. He's fine as a dribbler. He's better than KJ Evans, but KJ's a much better offensive player. KJ's a much better player overall. He's a better rebounder, he's a better defender, and he's a better scorer. And Sean Stewart has just got so far to go. He cannot shoot. He was 3 of 5 at the foul line, which is better than he usually is. But there are so many lineups. And this comes back to the coaching staff and the guys that they brought in and how they put the roster together. It reflects poorly on them because you just have too many guys that have a major limitation that have to play at the same time. And so what the result of that is, let's just take the starting five. Okay, the starting five should have enough talent and depth to play better than they do, but alas, they don't. So, Shellstad, Simpkins, Biddle, Stewart, and Pryor. That's your starting five. Devon Pryor cannot consistently get his own shot. Why? Don't really know. He's unbelievably athletic. He's got a clean stroke. He's a spot-up shooter at this point and a defender. Okay. And he's a little thin for that. But again, he's got some skill. Now, Nate Biddle can score at all 3 levels, but someone has to get him the ball. Well, Devon Pryor's not that kind of guy. Sean Stewart is not that kind of guy. Takai Simpkins isn't that kind of guy. So that leaves you one option. Oregon's pick and roll offense, and pick and roll defense for that matter, is as bad as I have ever seen. Because what other teams do is very smart. They're just blitzing Jackson Shellstad and saying, wait a minute, this guy will kill us if we run drop coverage, which is what Oregon does. This guy will absolutely torch. So they blitz him and say, we dare you to play 4-on-3. Well, if you don't have the guys that can do that, which Oregon doesn't, you have a problem because Nate Biddle as a passer is average at best. And the continuity between where the other guys are once the ball gets to the roller off the screen and roll is just not there. Like when Shellstad comes off the screen, he gets double teamed. He finds a way to get it to Biddle, which isn't always easy for him because he's the smallest guy on the court. He gets it to Nate Biddle, who then just grabs the ball and just kind of waits for the defense to recover. It's like, well, you've accomplished nothing except taking 6 to 7 seconds off of the shot clock now. And if it's Sean Stewart running the pick and roll and he gets it, the only way he's going to score is if he is left wide open and can go and jump because he can jump out of the freaking gym. But then you have to rotate guys as the game goes on. So let's say Pryor comes out and Des Lindsey goes in because you got to give a guy a break at some point. They played about the same number of minutes tonight, whatever you want to call it. Well, Des Lindsey can't shoot the 3. So now you have a part of 20% of your players on the floor with a serious limitation. 40% if Sean Stewart's still out there because he can't do anything except dunk. There were lineups in this game that had Des Lindsey and Ige Demir and Sean Stewart on the court at the same time. And yeah, KJ Evans was definitely missed in this game. But that's where the roster construction comes into play. Oregon's receiver room has been depleted by injuries. And guess what? Malik Benson and Jeremiah McLaughlin just went up to Seattle and torched the Huskies. If they'd officiated that play correctly with McClellan's catch, they would have had over 300 yards passing in a game where you were missing your three projected leading receivers, or three of them, coming into this year on a day where your number one tight end was held to 4 catches for 11 yards, who had been your leading receiver for 2 consecutive games. That is having the necessary depth. And yes, the numbers are different basketball to football, but the principle is the same, which is KJ Evans or Nate Biddle isn't there, and suddenly there is a shocking lack of skill on average in the front court because Sean Stewart and Ige Demir, they just cannot give you anything consistent at the offensive end. They can dunk, and they are big bodies. That's it. That's it. They do not shoot. They cannot win one-on-one post-ups. None of that. So now this goes to the next question. And I should have gotten to this sooner, but I've just had so many thoughts on that, on the lineups that were out there. And man, Waylon is struggling. Waylon needs to get going. I don't think that he will. I hope he does. Rooting for the guy, but man, he just looks so uncomfortable out there all the time. Had an open look for 3, didn't really hit the rim. I feel like he travels more than he comes up with an assist. So the question then becomes, what should we think about Dana Altman right now? And he's got a lot of equity in that building. You know why? Because he's earned it. First Final Four since Oregon won the national championship in 1939. Went to back-to-back Elite Eights. Pretty sure he's got the most wins in the history of Oregon men's basketball. Like, a lot of equity there. There's still a bunch of time in the season, not as much as you think. Like, really not as much as you think. This has to turn around. But I don't think the question with Dana Altman for Rob Mullins, the athletic director, would be, I mean, maybe Dana just gets to the point where he says, you know, I can't do this anymore. I don't think he is. I don't think he's like that at all. Because I remember asking questions about Dana Altman on the show a couple of years ago. And I remember going into the Pac-12 tournament 2 seasons ago, saying, yeah, if Dana Altman doesn't make the NCAA tournament, we got to have a serious conversation. Well, got to the round of 32. Then he got to the round of 32 with a much better team. This is a sizable step back. Sizable step back from last year. I don't think Altman is working off of the equity of the past. I think it's a part of it, but primarily I think it's the fact that he just took this program to back-to-back games where he was 1 or 2 possessions from the Sweet 16. And was in the Sweet 16, what was it, 3-4 years ago, when they got the COVID win against VCU, wasn't able to play, and then they played 2-seed Iowa, and then they thumped them. So in the last 4 seasons, I think it is, he's been to the NCAA tournament 3 times. Maybe it's 5. I think five times, 5 years. I got to think that math out in my head. I think it's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Okay. So in the last 5 seasons, he's been to the NCAA tournament 3 times, and he has won a game every single time that he has gone. So I think that a decision down the line to move on from Dana Altman and get a new coach would have to be a mutual one. I don't think Dana wants to be done coaching. And let's see how this plays out. But it's hard to not think about it, because this is going to be, unless there is a dramatic turnaround, this will be the worst Dana Altman team that I've covered on this show. And the first season that I had here hosting this pod was 2021 to 22. If you've been with me that entire time, man, great to have you here. We're coming up on the 15-day anniversary, I believe, of my first ever episode of Locked On Ducks. And what a ride it's been, and continues to be. I'm not just to be clear, I'm not going anywhere. But this is the worst one. This is the worst I've seen it. They don't do the little things well. They don't do the big things well. They don't look like they play together. The same problems keep showing up. It's not getting better. They don't play hard enough defensively. They can't rebound very well. The offense looks lost. when another team just does an extended zone, Oregon looks like they have no idea what to do. There are a lot of issues, a lot of serious problems with this Oregon team. You have to let the rest of the season play out. You're not firing in mid-season. That would be silly. But after this year, if it continues like this, right now, I feel like Oregon's legitimately going to be a 9-win team. That's what they look like. That's the level that they're playing at. That's not what their talent level is. As many shortcomings as the roster has, they're not a 9-win team talent-wise, but stylistically, they absolutely are. So that's where things are at. Hope you all enjoyed the Saturday show. Talk to you guys soon. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.